So there's a new report out about some of the business dealings of Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump Jr. Now, it turns out these two Trump children were actually working on a Soho development project. Now, this project almost got them in a little bit of trouble. See, they were very close to being indicted in 2012 on accusations related to the Soho project that they had misled prospective buyers about certain units within this project. Now, this is from a ProPublica investigation. They found that attorneys in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office spent about 2 years building a case against Ivanka and Trump Jr. Now, this case included emails showing that the Trumps knew that they were basically lying to potential buyers in order to, of course, get them to invest in the condo. In fact, in one email, according to 4 people who have seen it, the Trumps discussed how to coordinate false information that they had given to prospective buyers. In another, according to a person who read the emails, they worried that a reporter might have been onto them. And yet another, Donald Jr. spoke reassuringly to a broker who was concerned about the false statements, saying that nobody would ever find out. Obviously, people found out. That's why I'm talking about it right now. But nobody will find out because only people on the email chain or in the Trump organization know about this deception. And again, this is according to somebody who claims that they have actually seen these emails. Now, they are not actually released yet, so we're going off secondhand information. I understand that. But this is true. And look, this did happen. This case actually did happen. They did sue the Trumps, as I'm going to get into. The new part about this story is the emails. Okay, so look, what this shows is that, oh look, here's the Trumps trying to lie to make more money for themselves. Surprise, surprise. That family has pretty much shown already that they're shameless liars. So this is very easy to believe. Like father, like son, like daughter, apparently. In fact, one source familiar with the emails told ProPublica, quote, they knew it was wrong. There was no doubt that they approved, knew of, agreed to, and intentionally inflated the numbers in order to make more sales. So let me give you some more details about this case. Now, this whole thing, as I said, has to do with the Soho development deal. Now, what they did is that they basically built a condo slash apartment near Soho, not actually in Soho, very near. And it turns out they ran afoul of some zoning laws where they couldn't actually build like permanent condos. So it had to be something that you would buy, but you couldn't live in. I know, it's basically a hotel room that you could only stay a maximum of 120 nights per year. So, which is, again, super strange, right? Now, this is, again, because of where they decided to build it and their zoning laws. Now, interestingly enough, and it doesn't have too much bearing to do with the story, but I thought I'd, kind of point it out anyway. The two business partners on the Soho deal happen to have been Soviet-born businessmen Felix Sater and Tevfik Arif, who ran the Bayrock Group, another real estate development firm. Now, anybody who's watched the show knows I've talked a fair bit about Felix Sater. This is the guy who was who spent a year in prison for money laundering and also stabbed a guy in the face with a martini glass, with the stem of a martini glass. Very, very classy guy. So he was also part of this development deal. But that's, of course, the only thing that has to do with this actual thing. Now, what they were found doing was lying to prospective buyers about how many rooms were actually being rented out. In fact, in April 2008, the Trumps said that 31% of the condos in the buildings had been purchased. Donald Trump Jr. boasted to the Real Deal magazine that 55% of the units had been bought. In June 2008, Donald Jr. and Ivanka, alongside their brother Eric, announced that 60% had been snapped up. Quote, we're in a very unfortunate position where we have enough sales, and now we are strategically targeting certain buyers. Unfortunately, of course, none of that was true. It was all bullshit. It was all lies. And this is according to a sworn affidavit by a Trump partner filed with the New York Attorney General's office. By March of 2010, almost 2 years after the press conference, it was found that only 15.8% of the units had been sold. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what's the deal here? So what? Yeah, they puffed up their numbers a bit. That's dishonest, but it can't exactly be criminal, right? Well, according to the law, the deal hinged on selling at least 15% of the units. By law, the sales can't close with anything less. If they do, the Trumps and their partners would have had to return the buyers' down payments. But wait a minute, they got 15.8%, right? So they barely made it. They're fine, right? Wrong. Some buyers had concluded that they had been cheated. See, these are the people that were lied to. In August 2010, some sued the Trump Organization and others involved in the project in New York federal court. They said this action seeks to address the substantial and ongoing pattern of fraudulent misrepresentations and deceptive sales practices by the Trumps and the other defendants. The plaintiffs argued that there was a vast difference in value between a unit in a building that is 15% sold and one that is 60% sold. Their complaint accused the sellers, including the Trumps, of a consistent and concerted pattern of outright lies. Oh my God, the Trump family, people in the Trump family, lying to people to get money? No, say it ain't so. Yeah, of course, that's their MO. That's how they make their money, by lying to people and screwing people over and also not paying people. If you're not surprised, then I hear you. I'm not surprised either, but I figured I would still talk about it anyway. Now, because this goes into a corruption angle that is very interesting. Now, after that civil suit was filed, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office opened a criminal investigation. They don't normally do that. In fact, prosecutors are very wary of getting involved in a dispute between wealthy litigants. But in this instance, according to a person familiar with their thinking, the lawyers in the Major Economic Crimes Bureau quickly concluded that there was enough to warrant a criminal investigation. They believe that Ivanka and Donald Jr. might have violated something called the Martin Act. Now, that's a New York statute that bans any false advertisement in conjunction with the sale of a security or real estate. Prosecutors also saw potential fraud and larceny charges, applying a legal theory that by overstating the number of units sold, the Trumps were falsely inflating their value and, in effect, cheating unsuspecting condo buyers. So that's, of course, where the felony charges came from. So, look, to me, it's fairly obvious the Trumps cheat people because that's what they've always done. Okay, they're not the first to be cheated, these condo buyers, and they're obviously not the last. So what happened here? So why weren't they actually convicted, brought up on these charges, and, put in prison? Well, to get to that part of the story, we go to the Manhattan DA's office. Now, the DA at the time is a man named Cyrus Vance Jr., and I believe he's still there. Now, Vance happened to have been up for election around the time this lawsuit was going on, and this investigation was going on. Now, what does that have to do with any of this? Well, that same year, Trump attorney Mark Kasowitz decided that he would donate $25,000 to Vance's re-election campaign. Not only that, but after he had donated the money, he went and asked Vance to drop the case. That's fairly clear. And let me read a bit from ProPublica here. Now, on May 2016, 2012, Kasowitz visited Vance's office at 1 Hogan Place in downtown Manhattan. Dan Alonso, the chief assistant district attorney, and Adam Kaufman, the chief of the investigative division, were also at the meeting, but no one from the Major Economic Crimes Bureau had attended. Kasowitz, when he was there in the meeting, did not introduce any new arguments or facts during his session, basically saying the same thing that the lawyers for Ivanka and Donald Jr. were saying during the case. So they had that meeting, and Kasowitz had donated $25,000. So what happened? Well, Vance, 3 months later, overruled his own prosecutors and said, we're going to drop the case. Huh. He's going to drop the case. Doesn't that look a little suspicious to you? Oh, it just happened to be a political donation, and then 3 months later, I've dropped the case. Now, he said, he talked to ProPublica, and he said, I did not at the time believe a reasonable doubt that a crime had been committed. I had to make a call, and I made the call, and I think I made the right call. I needed about 25,000 reasons to make that call. Now, to be fair, he did return the $25,000 before the meeting, but there happened to be a later donation of $50,000, which he did keep. Now, that occurred less than 6 months after Vance dropped the case. When confronted with this information, according to ProPublica, Vance pledged to return that donation as well, saying that it would not be a millstone around the neck of his office. So basically, he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, taking money for dropping this case. The case is already dropped. But he's like, oh, well, I'm not going to let that be a millstone. I'll give it back. Sure you will. Now, in a statement to the news agency, Trump's lawyer, Kasowitz, said the donations, they weren't quid pro quo for anything. No, of course not. He turns out he's just a very big supporter of Mr. Vance. In fact, that's what he said, according to a statement. I donated to Cy Vance's campaign because I was and remain extremely impressed by him as a person of impeccable integrity, as a brilliant lawyer, and as a public servant with creative ideas and tremendous ability. I have never made a contribution to anyone's campaign, including Cy Vance's, as a quid pro quo for anything. Integrity. You want to talk about integrity, right? You gave him money, and he then overruled his own prosecutors that were building a very solid case for 2 years. Now, and if you're to believe this, it was reported that Kasowitz, when they dropped the case, allegedly boasted to his colleagues about representing Ivanka and Donald Jr. Now, according to two people, he said that the case was, quote, really dangerous, and that it was amazing that I got them off. If that's true, if those accounts are actually true, then that's disastrous. Now, obviously, we don't know, but looking at this case, it seems to be a clear case of corruption. You give me money, I drop the investigation. Blatant corruption, right? So two things I get from the story is that New York obviously has some very corrupt institutions. And the Trump and the Trump family, well, they're full of serial liars who try to screw people over to make an extra buck. So what happened to the Soho anyway? Well, it didn't work out. Like a lot of Trump businesses, it went bankrupt. And, the lawsuit that happened afterwards, the civil case, the Trumps ended up having to give 90% of the money back to the people who had bought the condos that felt that they were defrauded. So they still ended up having to give back the money because it was found, like I said, that they were defrauded. Look, the thing about this is that it kind of does also show the two different tiers of the justice system. Now, if it were you and I that screwed people over, out of their money, especially rich people, oh boy, we'd get the entire library thrown at us. But if you were rich and powerful and you put money into the right hands, well, then it turns out you might get away with almost anything. That's what's so gross about this and really indicative of what's wrong with America. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.